It says here, now it happened as they went that he entered a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha welcomed him, this is Jesus, into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who also sat at Jesus' feet and heard his words. But Martha was distracted with much serving, and she approached him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Therefore tell her to help me. And Jesus answered and said to her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled about many things, but one thing is needed, and Mary has chosen that good part, which will not be taken away from her. We will talk a little bit about that interaction as we start this series on Martha and Mary and Jesus visiting at their house. So just to establish what happens here so far. So Mary and Martha were sisters, and they lived in Bethany along with their brother Lazarus, that later Jesus was actually going to raise from the dead. But we have every indication here to believe that Martha and Mary were very good friends with Jesus. And Martha, certainly very hospitable, opens her house to Jesus and providing her great hospitality. Yes?
This isn't Mary Magdalene, right? This is
No, this is Mary. Yes, I believe that is correct. Yes, Mary Magdalene is a different Mary. There's many Marys that Jesus interacted with. Mary and Martha were sisters.
This is Mary, Lazarus' sister.
Yes. So Martha opens her house, great service to Jesus, focus on providing hospitality to him. And we see actually Mary, the sister of Martha and Lazarus, often at Jesus' feet throughout the New Testament. Certainly we see her here in Luke chapter 10. It says that he sat at Jesus' feet, but later in John chapter 11, verse 32, again we see Mary. The Bible there says Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, and she fell down at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. This is the time when Lazarus died. And then we see her even later in chapter 12. Verse 3 there says, Mary took a pound of very costly oil of spikenard, yes, anointed Jesus' feet again and wiped his feet with her hair. So we see Mary very often at Jesus' feet. And what happened there is that Martha, in that particular incident, complained in Luke chapter 10 that Mary was not helping her. I mean, you've been at a potluck before or some kind of gathering before, and there's one lady, two ladies doing all the work, and then there's everybody else, maybe especially the men. They don't do a whole lot other than maybe bring the food and eat it. I'm one of them. But anyways, we understand. There's some women that have a more inclination towards serving, right? And others are more distracted, I guess, from the work. And in a sense here, we want to see who was really distracted and who was doing the good thing and who was just being busy and worrying. But Martha's complaint, actually, it's met with a gentle rebuke from Jesus. Instead of, you would expect that Jesus will say, Mary, can you help your sister? Jesus didn't say that. Jesus actually rebukes Martha. He says, Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled about many things. But one thing is needed, Jesus tells her, and Mary has chosen that good part, which should not be taken away from her. So Martha was not a bad person. That's why Jesus very gently talks to her. Yes, sir?
It's interesting because in John chapter 11, when they talk about Lazarus
Yes.
and the two sisters, Jesus, it says here in verse 4, when Jesus heard that, he said, sickness is not unto death, but with God and the Son of God to be glorified to it. Now Jesus loved Martha.
Of course.
And
Yeah.
Kind of a weird switch on the back
Yeah.
of Martha.
Yes.
And here Martha is
For sure.
pointed out,
For sure.
not Mary and Martha,
Yeah.
which is interesting.
Yeah.
Because, you know, when Jesus speaks, he speaks with purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. So we see this exchange here. As I mentioned, Jesus rebukes her gently. This is a very gentle rebuke, right? Doesn't raise a voice at her. He just gently says, you know, you worry too much. Although I guess that's the way it can sound. I mean, it could be received as, I mean, I think I don't know, if my wife says something, I'll say, honey, you worry too much. I mean, she could think that that's not a very gentle rebuke, right? But Jesus confronts her, right? And like Red said, certainly Jesus loved Martha and Martha loved Jesus very much. But she wanted to serve the Lord. So she was in the process of doing something great, right? But she was distracted, according to what Jesus is saying here. So although Martha was a genuine believer, she was distracted. She was maybe misguided. Jesus was in her house, and instead of maybe paying more attention to Jesus, she was just very distracted with her work. And Jesus tells her this needs to be done. Mary tells Jesus that this needs to be done, and Mary is not helping me. And pretty much tell her, Jesus, you can tell her, you have authority to tell her to help me. Maybe she even told her sister, hey sister, come help me. And she's like, didn't listen to her. Sometimes that's how people are. You know, you don't want to do something, you're just not going to do it. She definitely found Jesus very interesting and wanted to spend every moment with Jesus. But keep in mind that it's not just the first time that, the only time that Martha kind of has this more direct exchange, to say so, with Jesus. Because later, so not only told Jesus, tell her to help me, as if, why aren't you telling her without me telling her? I mean, maybe even it's possible that maybe Jesus overheard Martha a few times asking Mary, come help me, come help me, come help me. And then it was maybe even like a rebuke to Jesus. Why don't you have her help? Why don't you ask her to help me? Right? That's very human nature, right? So Jesus puts her in a place gently, but that's not the only time that she kind of maybe finds issue with something Jesus was saying or doing. When I'm saying having issues, very, very mild, right? She was a little disturbed because she was too focused on what she was doing and distracted. But later in John chapter 11, remember when Jesus comes to see Lazarus, right? Because he had just died after 4 days in the grave. Of course, Mary ran because she was happy to see him. And Martha, what was she doing? She was in the house. She was upset and what is he telling him? You know, if you were here, he wouldn't have died. Right? So in a sense, is again kind of a rebuke, I guess. Like, what took you so long? I mean, why are you here now? If you only had been here, although, of course, she says later that, you know, I know that whatever you ask, God will give you. And then there's another one, you know, even later when Jesus says, remove the stone, she's the one that opposes Jesus or has her own mind about it. And she says, yeah, but at this time, there's going to be a stench. It's going to smell because he died for 4 days. So we see Martha, which I have no doubt that she was an amazing human being, right? I don't want to paint her in a negative light in any way. However, we do see her on a few occasions that she kind of was set on a certain path, and it didn't really coincide every time with the path that Jesus wanted her on. 3 occasions here in just couple of sections, and there may be others, or there may have been others, and maybe that was just Martha's way of being, that she was just very laser focused on doing her own thing, and if somebody tries to distract her, it could be like, leave me alone, I know what I'm doing kind of things, and she was kind of doing that with Jesus, and Jesus puts her in a place, but again, very gently. Yes, Bradley.
I think part of it too, it goes back to the two commandments.
Yes.
Jesus is like the first and greatest commandment, love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. Second, likewise, love your neighbor.
Right.
So, if you open your house, you should be hospitable. You should take care of the needs of others.
True.
Martha is doing what she needs to be doing, but she is putting the neighbors as number one when listening to God's word is number one. And this hasn't been written out for them to sit down and study like we have. Jesus is one-on-one giving them the word of God. And that is the most important thing, is that you should be there listening to God in the flesh.
Thank you.
And finding out whatever it is that he's teaching. You should be paying attention to that. So yes, taking care of the needs was important, but she got so distracted by that she's putting that number one. It's just like we get distracted by so much work and the bills that, I need to pick up an extra shift, so I'm not going to come to church on Sunday. I don't see it as anything different. I'm putting these needs that I still have a responsibility to take care of above God.
Yeah, and you're getting a little bit ahead of me, because you see exactly where I'm going with this. I'm just preparing the ground, but you're exactly 100% right. That's really exactly where this study is going, because we all in our lives have important things to do. Serving. In this case, she was serving. She was serving. She was doing a great thing. I mean, isn't she supposed to be serving? Of course. You go into her house. Which guest is going to sit around and do nothing? So she was doing a good thing, but she was still misguided. She had her priorities. Jesus is like, I'm not going anywhere, just sit down, okay? But she couldn't. She couldn't. And I know many of you, especially of you women, are kind of like that. And many times I go to somebody's house and I sit down and the host is kind of like running circles, like, can you sit down? You're making me dizzy. Yes, I'm sorry, Rhett and then Shante.
Well, one of the things that always strikes me, and I'm going to start out with this, when Jesus answered, he said to her, Martha, Martha, you're troubled and worried about too many things. And yet, he heals Peter's mom, or Peter's wife. And what does Peter's wife do? She gets up and starts serving everybody.
Yeah.
I don't see this as a rebuke. I just see it as, Martha, it's all right. Mary's chosen this, got plenty to do, and yet Jesus got on to the one individual. I was going to look for it, but I don't want to get distracted.
Yes.
But Jesus, when the sinner came in and she got the oil and she's washing Jesus' feet, and he says, I come into your house, you didn't even offer me water to wash my feet.
Yeah.
There are certain responsibilities you have when you are hospitable to someone and invite them in. And we know that apparently this was Martha's house, because Martha was the one that invited him. And where Mary fits into all this, I don't know. I have two sisters, and they have night and day.
Yes.
Not totally different. So it's kind of its own situation.
Yeah. Shante, yes, Sanse?
I find it interesting that Jesus lets her be busy with the preparations, and it's not until Martha tells someone else, like Mary, hey, join me in preparing, why aren't you helping me? That Jesus then says, well, she's got her priorities right, you're distracted. So it's kind of interesting, because he waits for her to say something about her being busy before he says, well, you're taking it a little too far, right?
Yeah.
Because I think it's one thing if you're going to be busy, and it's kind of like, that's your choice, and she probably should have just sat still and listened to him. But if you're going to try to drag someone else to be busy and just have them be distracted,
Yeah.
then that's where it's like, okay, wait, like they're doing the right thing. You have to make your choice, and I think so. The timing, I think, is important.
Yeah, and I mean, to some extent, this picture is not an accident here. If you see in my picture here, Martha, this is Martha here. If you see Martha, so I mean, it could feel kind of lonely for her. I'm supposed to make food for all these people, or whatever she was doing, and it looked like Mary. She was just doing nothing, right? Just So, as we said, being distracted is easy, especially being distracted with things that are important. I'm not talking being distracted with playing video games. That's really dumb and stupid. But you can be distracted with doing things that are important. Well, having a job, is important. Paying the bills is important, right? There's a lot of things that we do that is important. You could be out as a father, for instance, and you could be, working a lot and to provide for the family. But then you could be missing in action a lot. So there has to be a balance there, right? So it's easy to be distracted by the things of this world, which rob us by what is necessary, and that is time. Time in listening, in worshiping, in serving the Lord. So if we are not careful, that's really where we're going with this lesson. Bradley mentioned that before. It is very easy for us to allow the world around us in the name of, I got to pay the bills, I got to make more money, I have to do this, I have to do that. And then the things that are really important in your life, right, they get pushed on the sidelines. Somebody had a hand up. Yes, Shante?
This is a stretch here, but I'm thinking that Mary invited Jesus over and is busy preparing things for Jesus. I want to even say that.
You mean Martha?
Oh, sorry. Martha.
Yes. Because she was the one that invited. She is the one that was in the first place.
Right. And then she's busy preparing things for him.
Yes.
And I want to even say that sometimes maybe we get so distracted trying to focus on serving the Lord in like a very, we have to do this and then this and then this, but we don't take the moment to realize why we're doing it for the Lord.
Yeah.
And we're not sitting and actually listening to what it is that
Yeah.
So we get so distracted and thinking, I have to do this, and we get caught in the routine that we're not actually putting our heart into what it is that we're doing.
Yeah, and I would say it's not just we don't put our heart, obviously your heart is all around there, it's just that it's easy to be distracted. It's easy to just say, I got to do this now, this is important. And before you know it, you get caught up in your little routine that you don't see the big picture, right? Why Jesus was there. Let's read a couple of passages here. John chapter 4, verse 24. If I can have a couple of volunteers. John chapter 4, verse 24. Yes.
I have a loud voice, but I don't have a mic, okay?
Here.
All right.
Wait.
Just ask nicely.
Okay. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in truth and spirit. In spirit and truth.
In spirit and in truth. So, that means in a certain way, and many times people think that can worship God in their own way, right? But there's a right way, and then there's a wrong way. I don't know, maybe Martha thought that she was, in a sense, participating in, she was doing it in her own way, right? But we have to, when we worship God, we have to do it according to His will, in sincerity, and according to the Word of God. So let's also read 1 John, Elena, 1 John 2.
Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride in one's possessions, is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world with its lust is passing away, but the one who does the will of God remains forever.
We just finished the last series on what our attitude towards the world should be, and towards, that was a whole lesson that we spoke about that, and we read this passage in 1 John before, that we are not to be too caught up in the world, too involved with the world, too in the world. that we don't see the big picture, right? We can easily get so trapped, especially as a father, especially as a young father. You start a family, and I'll tell you, I've been there. It's very easy to just, I need this, I need that, and I need to work, I need to get a job. And you know, when you are before you're married, right, or you're by yourself, you can have a part-time job, no problem, right? Being in your peanuts for money, and it's enough for you to just get your mocha latte with 2 shots of espresso, whatever you get. But when you're married, when you have kids, when you have rent or mortgage payment, when you have, what else you got? Utilities going up every year, insurance, so many bills. Then all of a sudden, oops, I guess half a job, I gotta get a full-time job, and I have to get a part-time job, and 2 jobs, and I got 2.5 jobs, and before you know it, you work like crazy to where you can barely see your family. And sometimes you might have to do that, especially if your labor is not skilled. But it's very easy to end up just work. And certainly work is important, because the little junior needs diapers and formula. If you price formula lately, how expensive that is. And you have to work a lot as a father, and sometimes even as a mother. And it's very hard. So it's super, super hard to be distracted. And then before you know it, you can leave the things, the worshiping God and drawing to Jesus and leading your family spiritually. It could become kind of on the back burner. And when that happens, unfortunately, things could go out of control. And if you don't have the right things in order in your life, then your life has to suffer in many ways. But let's also read Romans chapter 1, verse 25. Elisa?
Let's start with 24. Therefore God also gave them up to uncleanness in the lust of their hearts, to dishonor their bodies among themselves, who exchanged the truth of God for the lie, and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen.
When it says they worship the creature rather than the Creator, really, that could be taken in so many different places, right? If at the end of the day, I had their time highlighted, because it really is how you spend your time that shows your priorities. Tell me how you spend your time. Let me take a look at your calendar, and I'll tell you your priorities. And really, I can tell a whole lot more than just your priority. I can tell you even the degree of your success, and your priority, if heaven is your objective in the end, just by looking at how somebody spends their time, right? It's very easy to get distracted with things that gives us pleasure, or the things of the world, things that entertain us. But if we're not intentional, it's very easy to just be distracted, like Mary, like Martha, and even though you think you're doing something good, you're not choosing that good thing that Jesus tells her. Matthew chapter 13, please, somebody. Matthew 13, if I can have a volunteer. I'm going to go to Eddie. Eddie, go ahead, sir. (19 through 22).
When anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in their heart. This is a seed sown along the path. A seed falling on rocky ground refers to someone who hears the word and at once receives it with joy. But since they have not root, they last only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, they quickly fall away. The seed falling among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, making it unfruitful.
Very good. So this is in the context of the parable of the sower. You guys have been enjoying the weather, right? and the rain
We
yesterday.
didn't pay the electric bill. The lights went out.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think so. Yeah.
I'll turn them back on. Hang
Just
on.
the Lord says, phew. But it says here, I want to focus on verse 22 in the parable of the sower. It says here that he who receives the seed, this is Christians, you receive the seeds. But if there's thorns and thistles around, which is really the cares of this world and the deceitfulness of riches, what is going to do? It's going to choke the word out and they're going to become unfruitful. And that's really what we can be. Christians can do that. Christians can be that. That, you are a Christian and you really understand you want to go to heaven and you want to do the right thing. But then you allow the worries of this life, you allow, whether it is indeed riches and I'll tell you, when it comes to riches, obviously we live in a society that the expectations are very high. And especially if people are so much into news and to social media, the expectations are so high and everybody tries to be somebody, right, to catch up with some Joneses or neighbors or that it's very easy to get entangled in that. I'll tell you, there used to be a time many years ago, even in this country, I would say, certainly back in my country. If you had like food and if you had a shelter and if you had one set of clothes, if you had a car, it's like, you were like really, really well, right? It used to be like this in this country too, Jim, you remember?
The turn of the century, the other century, to the 20th.
Have you been around that long?
That's when it
Yes.
started to change. Listen, I do the picking on around here, okay?
If you give it, you're supposed to take it back, yes. It's true. No, it's true. That's pretty much true in every society. But now we are in a society that people nowadays, who do they compare themselves to? Well, with other people, but not just with other average people that have their level of income. Social media and the news, it's all about putting big picture of the latest yacht that Jeff Bezos bought, right? And the biggest house that, Zuckerberg, whatever his name is, purchased in Hawaii. Or not just them, but any of these influencers and the way they like to flash, whatever their possession. And then before you know, you look at your car, it's like, man, my car is such a beater, But it takes you from place to place and you should be happy with it. The Bible says that if you have food and clothing, you should be content. But it's so easy to just want more and more and more and more. And before you know it, you just have to, obviously you have to put a lot of time to really acquire the riches, I guess the word is here. And it's called actually the deceitfulness of riches. The deceitfulness of riches. It's something deceitful about it. And there's so much deceitful about it. The devil will use that against us, even against a good Christian. Say, a good Christian, okay, I will give you a curse, being hardworking, get 3 jobs, work like a dog, and then you're not going to have time to go to church, to have Bible study, to read your Bible in your house, to lead your kids, to keep an eye on them, to monitor what things are happening, and to really be involved and really slow down to listen to Jesus. You're not going to have time to do that. All in the name of, I want to provide a better, future for my family. Again, the intention is not wrong in itself, which good father doesn't want to be a provider. We're supposed to be a good provider for our family. But it could be taken to the extreme, just like Martha did here. Sir?
I think one of the things about the Bible, as far as what I've read, is if a man doesn't work, neither shall he eat. So God expects you to work.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe he said it pretty straightforward. A man shall work 6 days.
Yeah.
I don't even work 6 days, but, but 6 days.
There used to be a time you used to work 6 days, yeah?
Here's the deceitfulness. And owning a business, I can kind of say this and with actual knowledge of it. I have a guy that makes $20 an hour, and he's doing just fine. But then he buys a car, now he needs to make more money.
Yeah.
Not my fault he bought a car. But I give him a raise, and now he's paying for that new car. So he's now $25 an hour. And a little bit further down the line, he still doesn't have any money. And so he needs another raise, and he make it $30 an hour. And
Or he gets a new
what
job.
happens is the deceitfulness of riches makes us think if I had just a little bit more, it'd be easier. But you spend what you make if you're not careful. So you need to spend what you need, save, and prepare for the future.
Yeah.
And I know that we read passages like, oh, okay, I got a great crop, I'm gonna tear down my barn, bigger barns. But the whole point of these kind of lessons isn't that you were successful, it's what are you going to do with your success?
Yeah.
Are you going to be mindful of others? Because even where it says, you know, the man shall not work, neither shall he eat, but you should get a job so that you're also able to help others.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's never a wrong work.
Yeah.
You know, what I've seen is everybody wants to make as much as they can with as little effort as possible. You know, if I can show up to work, I got an 8-hour day, I got 2 15-minute breaks, a 30-minute lunch, but I can use the bathroom any time during the day, but not during my break or lunch. Go figure. Those are the times that are set apart for them.
Said from a business owner.
Said from a business owner, that's right. Observation. And I think with the Lord, we have to be careful not to just do what is expected of us,
Yeah.
but do what's expected of us because we want to.
Yeah.
And we try to find a way to enjoy it. There's a lot of things you do in life that you don't enjoy until you do it long enough and you find a mindset that says, hey, I can make this enjoyable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you don't mind doing it.
Yeah.
And I think serving the Lord is one of those things where, well, I don't understand necessarily all the things I should do, but as I understand each one in order, I apply it in my life and practice it.
Yeah.
It's not that hard.
Yeah.
I mean, Paul says his commandments are not burdensome.
Yeah.
And the only reason they ever become burdensome is because we don't want to do it.
Yeah. 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 So, so really, we have to look at this from a perspective, from the standpoint of wisdom, really, and to understand that really, the biggest challenge when it comes in doing things, and obviously we are talking here about doing things that we're supposed to do. Mary, she was supposed to serve. Okay, that's something that all of us, we're supposed to work, right? But when we're talking about, there's a component in our life called time, right? And I tell you, as we mature and as we grow in wisdom, I know that is certainly the case for me. I understand the value of time a whole lot more than I did when I was a kid. And we should understand that time is very limited to all of us. So then it occurred to me shortly after I got married that there's something to do about a man's got to work. And when I first got my job, Lisa, remember, do you remember how much they pay me? $5.25. They pay me $5.25. And I thought, whoa, this is fantastic. I got a job. Wonderful. And I thought, oh, this is wonderful. And then I realized very quickly that wasn't paying the bills, especially when she became pregnant. It's like, oh, wow, now what? And then I looked so hard and I said, oh, man. And then I found another job. It's like, it paid me $12 an hour with benefits. And I thought, boy, I was so happy. I was so happy. And then about a year later, I realized, boy, this money doesn't go very far. I was okay full time. And then we had a second kid on the way. Mark was on the way. And then I got a second job, right? Another second job working so this was 40 hours a week.
Should have sold Mark.
Who was going to sell him, buy him, right? So this was 40 hours a week. And then I got a second job. This is my first. Love this job. Working 10 years. The second job, I think they paid me about $10 an hour. It wasn't the same amount, or 12, about $10 an hour. And I was working in that job about 20 hours a week. And that's 60 hours a week. And I was making still kind of peanuts kind of money, right? And then it was a time that I got a third job that I was doing on the side, and that was $15 an hour or something, or I was doing it. Remember, I was going to people's houses, and I was drawing blood, and that was like another 20 hours. So I was working 80 hours a week. 80 hours a week. And how did we do, honey? We were, Fun times. Hey, I love that. Fun times. And if you're young, you know what I'm talking about. Life is kind of fun when you are young, right? But I'll tell you, I want to give you today a piece of a gem, right? Because I didn't come to realize this until much later. I could have worked 80 hours a week is not a joke, okay? 80 hours a week is you have to work like close to 16 hours a day. And then you have to sleep, right? 16. Yeah. So, and there's only 24 hours in a day, and you gotta sleep. What they say, sleep 8 hours? Well, what do you do anything else? When do you, thankfully my wife at the time then was staying home, exchanging diapers, and it wasn't fun for her either. But working 16 hours a week, it's for the birds, it's bad. It's bad. If you ever work 16 hours a week, a day, it's not a day. Yeah, 16 hours a day. It's terrible. It's very hard. There's better ways. You don't have to do that. So I realized then after a while, I was like, 80 hours a week. Maybe I can find the job that pays me $40 an hour, and then I can only work 40 hours a week. That's something, an interesting idea. And then it is. And then it's just a matter of asking yourself and asking God the right question. What can I do so that I can pay the bills, I can make sure that the kids have milk and everything, and I can pay the bills, but I don't have to work 80 hours a week and 16 hours a day. And I'll tell you, that is the question that if you're young, you should ask yourself. And I'm not even saying ask yourself and ask God, what can you do to make $40 an hour? And this is not about the money. Okay, this is not about the money. This is about what can you do so that you don't work 16 hours a day, because that's horrible. That's horrible. Instead, ask yourself, what can I do that I can get paid $40 an hour, $50 an hour, $100 an hour, or $200 an hour? And you can say, wait, what are you talking about? How can you make two? Because then you know what? If you make this much money, then you only work 10 hours a week. Hey, and then you have a lot of time. You see, I want to challenge you, especially if you're young, to ask yourself, what can I do so that I don't have to work 16 hours a day? Because then if you have to work 16 hours a day, you're not going to have time for much, even for your own family, for worship, for neighbors, for doing good to others. So ask yourself, and by the way, don't be intimidated by this, because we live in the greatest country on earth, and this is the best time in history that, as far as economic opportunities, I'll just tell you one cue I'm giving you, and then I'm going to leave you by yourself. The way that you can do this, first you have to ask the right question as to how I can do this, and then maybe look for, because there's plenty of people in this world that are making this. Would you say that? Right. So I'm saying, ask yourself, what can I do so I can be here so that I don't have to work 80 hours a week? That's what I'm going with this. Because the reason I'm spending this time on this, right, and you can forget everything, but remember that you do not want to work 80 hours a week. Because if you work 80 hours a week, the devil has got a hold of your time, and then in the name of doing something positive, then you're going to be doing nothing much else, and that's not the way to do it. So the sooner that you realize, boy, what can I do to get past the $5.25 an hour, then you can have more time. You can have more time to do the things that are really important and that you're really very intentional for you to do in life. Does that make sense? Okay, let's just continue. So What I'm going to say next is that if God is not first in our lives, and our efforts are not first given to spiritual things, even the greatest temporal service renders to our fellow men is of no real value to us or to them. So, and it's very hard to say, well, God, I'm putting you first, but I'm dedicating 2/3 of my time, being out and working, and then I only have time to sleep pretty much and say hello to my kids once a day when I come to work and late at night. Think about it. You would have to get up real early in the morning. 16 hours is a long time, right? Some of you work long time, 8 hours. 16 hours is even, and plus don't mention time going back and forth. So very important. So just a couple of verses I'm going to read here. Mark chapter 12, verses 29 to 31. Mark 12, 29 to 31. Who wants to help me? Tracy, you got that? Oh, Lisa raised a hand. Tracy got it. Go ahead.
12:29. Jesus answered, "The first of all the commandments is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. This is the first commandment. And the second like it is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these."
So you see, first commandment, love God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength. And, as I mentioned earlier, how you spend your time, it will show your priorities. You can't say, well, I love God, but then your priorities are like, obviously, if you have to work so much, comes a Bible study, comes worship service, you say, well, I got to work. And then God is no longer first. Or it's not just church, but also helping others, be present in your family, for those in need, and so forth. John, also chapter 11, this is at the raising of Lazarus. Go ahead, sir.
Verse 21.
Verses 21, jump to 32, jump to 37.
All right. Verse 21. Now Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Verse 32. Then when Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died."
Twice now.
Verse 37. And some of them said, "Could not this man who opened the eyes of the blind also have kept this man from dying?"
So you see, they did not think of Jesus as, what he can do. They see him as, well, what he could have done, should have done. But we need to understand that if we put our faith in God, God will work things in His own way in our life. Okay, let me see if I have time for another. I'm just going to end here with this slide here. Talking about being distracted, how easy it is. There's been a study, the Pew Research Center. It says that 49% of American adults now attend religious services just a few times a year. Rarely or never. And a substantial proportion, 22% of all U.S. adults say they now go to religious services less often than they did at another point during adulthood. And he goes on to say that among those who did attend, those whose attendance had waned, the most common offered reason have to do with practical concerns, including many who say that they are just too busy to attend. Hey, that's the reason. You're too busy. You're too busy. And back 50 years ago, were people not so busy back then? Jim?
They were busy.
They were busy too. But then you made priorities for what's important. Right? So just think about it. 49% of adults.
I think you also had a lot of businesses back then. You had states where there was no working on Sundays.
Yeah.
And we've gotten away from that. Now businesses are open, except for Chick-fil-A. I get it. But they're open. They're open all the time. I think
they are.
I'm not saying that that's the excuse for the individual. I'm saying that's opened the door for people to use that as an excuse.
Use that as an excuse because, thankfully we live in America, and what happens, Elena, if you get a job, I remember Elena just got a job at Costco, and her first weekend, guess who works that weekend, Saturday and Sunday?
No. I got the job at Allen, and then they scheduled me Sunday morning when I blocked out my availability that I wasn't available, and I went up to them and I said, hey, I can't do that. And they're like, what? What job do you have? No, I don't have a job. I go to church every Sunday morning. Okay, no, what time do you go to work? I don't go to work. Three times. They asked me, okay, what time do you go to work? No, I need to go to church. And then I go to Costco, like a real, actual job, and I say, okay, I have church on Sunday and Wednesday. Oh, okay, no problem. We'll accommodate that. It just depends. But seeing that, it kind of
Yeah. The good news is that we work in the United States of America, and in the United States of America, there's religious accommodation. You tell your boss, guess boss, what? I'm not going to work on Sunday, and they cannot force you or fire you, right? Lots of hands up. Elena, you want to finish that thought? Finish.
seeing that, it kind of makes me sympathize with them because, I mean, if these people didn't grow up going to church or didn't grow up around people going to church, when I say I go to church every Sunday without exception, that's like, whoa, what? But I mean, I can't visualize that, but these people, they genuinely can't understand that. So that's
Yeah. Rhett, last word, yes.
One of the things that I think you mentioned 50 years ago. 50 years ago, there was a concept of God being very important in our lives.
Yeah.
And if you just look at the media and the direction they have gone for the last 50 plus years, is doing everything they can to get God out of everything. God out of school, God out of your life, God out of everything they can possibly do. And it's just like anything else. If you tell someone something long enough, they'll think blue is actually green.
Right.
All you got to do is say it often enough and consistently to where they think that.
Yeah.
And now Sunday's not important. Why? Well, God's not important. And when God's not important, why go to church?
Yeah.
You know, that whole busy, that doesn't mean busy going to work. That busy, I got personal things. I got something I want to do. Doesn't involve God because, well, God's just God. Used to be God was important. You know?
Yeah.
And I'm going to say this because it's just one of those things. You won't find Mormons with that excuse. You won't find Muslims with that excuse. You won't find a lot of people with that excuse. In fact, a lot of these people will take, okay, it's that hour of the day. They're going to throw out their mat and start praying. It's all a matter of your conviction and your desire
And your priorities.
to do what you have prioritized.
Very good. Let's think on that. Let's choose this week to have the right priorities. We'll continue this study on next time we see each other. Thank you. We'll take a 10-minute break, come back for worship at 11. Thank you.
It's supposed to be 15.